Hey, welcome to the Lowdown Newsletter, where we take a look at everything that's happening in aviation defense over the past week. If you're into this kind of content, check out the Lowdown Newsletter, which we have linked down below. We'll send you a newsletter about every week. We won't spam you with things that are happening around the globe when it comes to aviation defense, things that I think you'll find interesting if this is your type of thing. So we always kick it off with history today. And February 17th, 2008, Kosovo declared its independence. This was 9 years after the NATO intervention and the 78-day bombing campaign that went against the Serbian military and the Yugoslavian President Slobodan Milosevic to withdraw their troops out of Kosovo. So 9 years after that. Next, every lowdown comes with a threat of the day to give you little bits and pieces of the things that are flying around and shooting out there. So the JF-17, this is a joint venture between the Chinese and the Pakistanis to develop a modern fourth generation fighter that's able to be exported. The JF-17 entered IOC, or initial operating capability, in 2007, and it's had several upgrades. Recently, Block 3 made its appearance. Notably, that Block 3 has an AESA radar as well as some other upgrades, but I think the AESA radar is a big point of this. Actively electronically scanned arrayed radar. The AESA, again, takes it to the next level, able to target and track multiple targets across the spectrum. And this JF-17 being targeted for export variant, as well as support the Pakistani Air Force. So they've used it in engagements since it's been online. It is a multi-role fighter, both capable of air-to-air and air-to-ground. All right, over to the flight line with our aviation and defense news. Saudi Arabia hosted the Spears of Victory 2025 exercise. We're at a number of nations, and just looking at this picture here is pretty cool to see this mix of iron and tail flashes on the flight line. I can pick out, obviously, the JF-17 from Pakistan sitting there, front row at the bottom of the frame there. But you have the Emiratis, the Qataris, US, Moroccans, and we have F-16s, Rafaels, JF-17s, F-15s, all mixed up in the lineup here from a variety of nations, which is pretty impressive to see. Of note, out of this exercise, the JF-17 actually conducted air refueling all the way from Pakistan back to Saudi Arabia and back. So this was a strategic level show and test for the Pakistanis to be able to conduct long-range air refueling from point A to point B outside of their nation. So again, a lot going on when it comes to defense and aviation. All right, the Navy's had a pretty rough go, I would say, into 24, 25. This week was no different. The USS Harry S. Truman had a collision with a merchant vessel flagged out of Panama. This occurred outside of Egypt in the Mediterranean Sea. Now, this was on February 12th. Both ships were underway. No critical damage was sustained to the USS Harry S. Truman. There were no injuries, so no damage to the propulsion system or other critical systems. They were able to resume operations nearly right away, and they put up pictures on social media of Hornets taken off from the flight deck shortly after this occurred. I mean, just when Ukraine couldn't get any worse, I think a near disaster was avoided this week. So drones struck the Chernobyl reactor number 4 containment lid, if you want to call it a lid. I mean, it's the probably biggest lid in the world, punching a hole through it. Now, the UN, International Atomic Energy Agency, said there's no radiation leak. Ukrainians said there's no radiation leak, but you can see parts and pieces of a drone, which Ukraine's saying Russia did it. Russia is saying they didn't do it. It's a false flag operation so that they can be blamed for it. But I mean, scary that the hole that it punched inside this dome, rather large. Not what you want when you're talking about Chernobyl there. All right, hey, if you're a trivia person, the F-16 Fighting Falcon, aka the Viper, again, anyone who's flown it or works on it doesn't call it the Fighting Falcon, despite what everyone says out there on the internet. Just no one ever says anything about the A-10 being called the Hawk. It's actually the Thunderbolt II, right? But no one ever brings that up. So the F-16 is the most widely used fighter jet, or one of the most widely used fighter jets in the world. Which country was the first nation to employ it and score an aerial victory? So check out the newsletter. Vote once and only twice. Our Defense Secretary Hegseth, he has put a pause on the Air Force's reorganization. So the Air Force has been undergoing this big reorganization for the great power competition. One of the key things is the Integrated Capabilities Command. So Secretary Hegseth put a pause on this, but the Air Force, rapidly changing and evolving as far as how the structure is built and comprised. So he said, no, we're going to wait and do a review to determine really, what is needed. Here's a fun fact. The Chinese PLA, the People's Liberation Army Air Force, they have 195 J-20 fighters as of mid last year. They put 70 into service from July 23 until June of 24. So 70 aircraft in 1 year, and it seems that their production rate is only increasing as we see the J-20 flying around more and more often. All right, a Navy Growler has crashed into the San Diego Harbor, operating out of North Island Air Station, or Naval Air Station, sorry. Both crewmen are safely ejected, which is the main thing. There are, again, more memes rolling around. Navy ejection seats getting a lot of work. The good thing is the ejection seats work. Not always the case. So let's take a look at this CCTV footage. I mean, that thing was a rocket ship. And literally, it's got 2 rocket motors sitting on the back end. So this is quite the steep impact angle, as you can see, going into the water there. Again, both crews safely ejected. It sounds like this happened on takeoff or executing a go-around somewhere in the landing departure phase of flight. The weather was bad, so you got to wonder if there's spatial disorientation involved. You can see that the gear is still down as this thing goes screaming into the water here. So obviously it's happening in and around the takeoff or landing phase, but yeah, the Navy's going to do an investigation. And undoubtedly someone will get mad that I didn't speculate. I mean, I felt like that was the most speculation I've ever done, but let the accident investigation run its course. So the J-20 has been spotted in beast mode, carrying upwards of 14 PL-15 long-range air-to-air missiles. It looks like we have 8 of them on the wings here, and they should have 2 on the chins, and then 4 internal. So 14 PL-15s based upon the photo on the left here. PL-15, it's got a long-range, long stick, so to speak. Now, while it does sacrifice stealth for carrying that, with the range there, maybe stealth doesn't really matter as much because you can shoot everyone really far away. All right, that's it for the lowdown. You can check the latest episode out with Woody Oakes. Flash hosted that episode. And then upcoming, we got Brad Thomas, a former Delta Force operator, Ranger during Somalia, where we talk about surviving Black Hawk Down, which is now out on Netflix. And it's a really great documentary. I got a chance to watch it. Brad and I recorded the day it came out. I hadn't seen it yet, and now I've seen it. So you can check that out as well. But if you're into this kind of thing, make sure you check out the Lowdown newsletter. That's linked down below, and I'll see you next time.